Howdy, you're watching the Think Brazos podcast. We host conversations with locals, politicians, and policy experts to help families thrive in Brazos County, Texas. So when you're thinking about how to make your community better, just remember, think local, think Brazos. Before we jump in, if you're voting in Brazos County this election, we've put together a free 2026 Brazos Valley candidate guide. It lists every race on the ballot, from federal to local, with a downloadable spreadsheet you can customize and share. Find it at thinkbrazos.org.
This is the Think Brazos podcast, and we are joined by Miss Wanda Watson, who is the incumbent for Precinct 4 of the county, I almost said city council, but the county, I always get this messed up, County Commissioners Court. There we go.
And we're Brazos County in particular.
Brazos County Commissioners Court. So once I got through all that, thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate it. This isn't the first time we've spoken to you, so thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and I truly support the mission of Habitat for Humanity. So this was an easy one.
Well, thank you. So the first thing I wanted to get into is this is a little different from speaking to someone running for the first time or that kind of thing. Is you've been in your position, Precinct 4, for going on 4 years now. You're running for re-election. What do you feel maybe that you've learned over those 3.5 years being in that position?
Like any new job, you have to learn the culture. What are the how the operation? You have to do an assessment of what is going on, and whatever you perceived it to be, how do you, within the scope of what you've learned, how do you operate? And in my case, I ran to serve the community. So within what is allowed, or the structure of in this case, the Commissioners Court, what within that can I use to serve my constituents? Yeah.
Okay. And has it been rough? Has it been easy? What do you think?
It's had some rewarding moments.
Okay.
And it's had some very challenging moments.
Okay.
And probably, as everyone knows, probably the most challenging and the most unfortunate one was the debate over the East Loop.
Yeah.
The East Loop probably was the toughest part of that.
That was very,
It really came, I think it impacted a number of us personally. While it's not my precinct, the overall court serves the whole county.
Right.
And so you couldn't, at least I believe, you could not be a part of that in terms of listening to the citizens and how they felt about the issue, understanding the pros and cons of it, what could have been done better to bring that issue forward. That's, the creation of the bond initiative and the issues surrounding why it was even a consideration happened before not on my watch.
It didn't.
But it's one of the things that we talk about that, whether it's a dereliction of duty to say not my fault, not my problem, because that's not true. If you run for an office, we say Brazos County. Yes, I have 1/4 of that county. But as an overall commissioner, we have to make decisions that will impact the whole county, or a portion, in this case, the East Loop. Yeah. And so hearing the citizens' concern and how they expressed it was pretty tough.
Yeah, I watched quite a bit of that, and it was at times very, very difficult to see. So, yeah, that's interesting. So you're running for re-election. What would you say are a couple of your primary, priorities? Should you be re-elected, or things that you would like to get accomplished?
Again, going back to the scope of the job, we're somewhat limited by statutes and Texas legislation on what we can and can't do. Yeah. The priorities or the outcry or the things that we hear about most are obviously the increase in taxes, the tax rate, how we manage the budget, but more so the issue of transparency. That has become a big one. And I think it really came to the forefront during the East Loop discussion, because as that was coming forward again, the decision to do that didn't happen on my watch. And so while I was not a part of that, I take somewhat responsibility, because how do we inform our constituents? Even myself, we're not as informed as we should be. And especially about the Commissioners Court. I think people have a better idea of what the City Council does, because it has a direct day-to-day impact. Whereas the County Commissioner, I always say, our job technically begins at the county line, yet a large percentage of most of our constituents live within the city limits.
It's an interesting situation.
Lives within the city limits. And so that is what we're confronted with, is how do we balance the scope of what by statutes we've been created by the Texas legislature? So while we are the policy, when we manage the county, we're designated by the Texas legislature. It limits what we can and cannot do, but it does not mean that our constituents or the residents of the county are not impacted by the decisions that we make. And so you really have to do a deep dive. And that was one of the things that I learned, coming into local government, county government in particular. How does this impact our residents? What can I do? It is about service, and where I can't serve or where I'm limited, I can still be a resource, a voice, and advocate.
Okay. If we're looking at Precinct 4 in particular, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that are facing the precinct and facing the precinct's people, citizens?
So I will say Precinct 4, most of the residents, particularly the longtime residents, feel somewhat disenfranchised. Okay. Because I call it old Bryan. That's just my wording to make that distinction, because it is already, it's been developed. Some of it is not as nice as some of the newer stuff. And so residents see, I call it the shiny stuff that is going into all of this new development that is sort of surrounding them. And so when they have issues, when they don't have a paved or well-paved street, or when they don't have sidewalks or at least streets with curves on it, they don't have good drainage. That is not something that by statutes, again, I have to make this distinction. The county doesn't do that. It's within the city limits, and therefore the city of Bryan or the city of College Station is responsible for that. And so that's not, while I can advocate, I can't force, either city to do what the citizens may want. And so that's the difficulty. And I also understand, I was in a meeting and they talked about the old infrastructure. Water, sewer. To go in there and fix that would cost millions of dollars. And that's and you can't have a sidewalk until you redo all of that.
And that's not something that the county necessarily does. No. Because that's a city thing.
That's a city thing.
Wow. So it sounds like you kind of get yelled at sometimes for things that you don't have any control over. Is that part of the job?
Right. It is part of the job. I won't say that necessarily that I get yelled at a lot. Okay. I mean, again, because what I do when I get into my long discussion, I literally will say, kind of just like the explanation that I gave you, I hear you, I understand your frustration. Yeah. What I will always say to them is, if they bring me an issue and say, I live on Elm Street, for example, and here are my issues. What I will do, particularly since I try to cultivate relationship with my counterparts at the city council. And so 4 of the 7 city councilmen, I have some part or all of their district. So city council district 1, 2, a little bit of 5, and a part of 3. Okay. So I try to be collaborative with them, and either through them, I will say, okay, I have a constituent who has called me about X problem, and I know that it's a city's matter. I'm letting you know. I see. What can be done. And I tell the constituent, I tell the person, the resident, I'll say, that is not a county function. or that I can do anything about. I will find out who, so I'll call and at least say what department does this.
Yeah. So do you feel like when you do that you get assistance from the I guess it would be...
For the most part, they'll take my call.
Okay.
And they'll either say, this is so-and-so's department. For example, I had in my neighborhood, after Christmas, it became apparent that we have, it's sort of like it's a rebirth, because I'm in an older neighborhood. It's like a rebirth of families moving in with children. Well, after Christmas, all of a sudden, bicycles everywhere.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So the kids were just zipping up and down. We don't have sidewalks. We do have curves. And so one of the moms who was sitting out there watching the little mother hen, and they had come together, little boys, in fact, about 6 little boys, and they all have bicycles. Well, the street is pretty busy. So it's sort of like a feeder into the subdivision. And she wanted to know from me, what would it take to get, what do you call it, speed bumps.
Speed bumps, yeah.
To get speed bumps. So I called the city councilman. He told me what department to call.
Okay.
And so I called that department. And so I'm kind of waiting for them to either come out and do an assessment. You know, I don't know what the outcome will be. So I told the mom, I've called and I'm waiting to hear.
Okay.
And I will persist on their behalf, because I understand the frustration of not knowing when, where, who to go to, who to call, what is, and sometimes I will use my position if I think I'd at least get some feedback or some action. I don't try to use it just to go, do you know who I am? I do try to use it to benefit.
Yeah. So
to
it's
serve.
More, it's more advocacy when it comes
Absolutely.
to the city.
That's what I call it, advocacy and service and advocacy and a voice.
Okay, so I wanted to go into something that I think could have a major impact in the coming years on a lot of housing in Brazos County. As you know, there are homes that are going in both inside city limits and outside city limits. I wanted to hear your take on should the county develop a more, I don't want to say strict, but a more standardized code of development outside of the city limits. As it is right now, it's very unstrict. I remember the first time Habitat built a house, it was on the east side of town, outside of city limits on someone's land. It was so different. It was like, pay us $10 and go build.
It was like a permitting fee.
Yeah, it was a $10 or $20 permitting fee, and that was it. And which we appreciated because, things are so stringent in the city limits. But at the same time, there's a back and forth over, do we need to have more rules or not outside of city limits when it comes to MUDs, PUDs, things like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right,
the municipal utility.
And I do personally, I do believe that we do right now. Well, one of the things, again, this is that learning thing. Didn't know there was such a thing until it came up about 6 months ago. Where, and I think to your point, with all of the growth that is happening, outside of the city now, with all of the significant growth and the state laws that changed where the cities could annex.
Exactly. Yeah.
The need for subdivision regulations is important. And so to your question, about 6 to 9 months ago, that came up.
It did.
And so in preparation, because that's become such a hot topic, in my preparation for understanding some of this a little bit deeper, obviously like everybody else, you go out there and you Google. And so I was able to go to our website and pull up our subdivision regulations, and I as soon as I started reading, I remember, okay, that was something that had been discussed. And we're in the process of doing it. Okay. We so need to update our subdivision regulation because it is coming whether we want it or not. And so as I was looking at what we had and how far back and how long, how different the court is, I thought, oh my goodness. In fact, it was one of those where I sort of triggered what's the status of that? And somebody else said, oh, we have an attorney, because that, the legalese that goes into all of that. And so we've had to contract that out to help us update that regulation book. because
So
the need
contract outside of staff.
outside of staff, because sometimes you have to go out,
Yeah.
because it's a one-time thing, and if you have a contract, if you set up a contract with somebody that specializes in that, then you do that.
Okay.
Because again, we may not have staff that does go, that will be able to delve that deeply into that process. And so it's sort of like that's something that we're having rewritten. And if I remember correctly, that was something that was going to be considered. Because
Do you know what the time frame is?
oh gosh, no. And that was the thing that I think even when I brought it up, it was kind of like we knew we had sent it out to be reworked or rewritten. But I think once we sent it out, and it was again one of those things we talk about, how do we make sure that when we are, updating something, we are making sure that we stay on top of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but no, we know that it's coming, and that's sort of when we had, like, for example, you were there this morning, they were talking about, we're getting ready to host the Judges and Commissioners conference here in Brazos County at the Expo Center.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually like coming here.
Good.
Because again, we're 254 counties, but I call it the urban-ish counties, maybe less than 100.
Yeah.
Total, and that includes us.
Okay.
But small town counties, they like coming to Brazos County for this conference.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, and definitely keep us posted, because it's something that not just us, but I think all builders in Brazos County are very interested to hear what the status of that will be. What I wanted to ask you next is regarding what is your philosophy? I think I have an idea of this, but based on your 3.5 years of service, but what is your philosophy on incentivizing especially larger businesses to come to Brazos County? I guess you call them tax incentives, abatements. What's your philosophy on that? Is that something that we need to keep doing or not?
I think it's part of the process.
Okay.
So it's sort of been more because of the uniqueness of our county, having the twin cities, if you want to call them that, having Texas A&M, and of course then the county, we have companies that show an interest in us, but I have not, except for maybe one potential company, I've not heard a single a company, organization, whatever, that has not, even as they're looking at us, it's almost like it's the playbook, the checklist, discussing tax incentives. Is part and parcel of the consideration when they're coming. Like I said, I've only seen one where I thought that they were not going to even delve into that. They haven't chosen us yet, but everything. It's not like overnight when you decide you're going to move somewhere. They really do have to. You have to be vetted. Do you meet the criteria of what they need for them to come into Brazos County? But nearly all, I haven't seen a single one, and I just thought that was just how it is. Everybody's asked for some people will play a little bit of hardball, and what they ask for seems a little bit over the top, and then some will just ask for the standard 5 year. I think we go up to 10. Anything more than we don't do more than 10.
But do you feel like it overall benefits, especially the low to moderate income workers in our community? Meaning that, the businesses that come in are employing, people that need those jobs?
Not enough.
Okay.
And if you think about the kinds of jobs, because some of it has such depth in terms of technology, or it's so specialized.
Okay.
It's one of the things, because I always ask that question.
Yeah.
If I'm in the room while it's being discussed, that we are looking at the kinds of how many people are they going to employ, what skill sets do they need. The attraction is our Relish campus, which is in Precinct 4. Obviously Texas A&M, but you don't always have a ready workforce because it's so specialized. That's one of the things I was telling someone. I said, even with Texas A&M University and their, particularly in engineering or the business school kinds of things, business maybe, but unless they've done an internship in a certain field, they're not necessarily ready to walk in and take the job. It just means that they are trainable
Yeah.
They may have the foundational expertise in the field,
Yeah.
but they may not be, task ready, job ready to take the job, and that's always my concern.
Oh, okay.
And one company I really like because they included BISD in the
Good.
discussion, because their motto or their policy is to consider internships for high school students.
Okay.
And any company that
That's
comes in
great.
with that is absolutely phenomenal.
That is
And I
great.
was glad. And this wasn't because I usually ask the question, are there internships?
Right.
What do you do? And this company on their own, maybe that's how they operate.
Yeah.
They had her, Dr. Carabine, at the table.
Okay. Well, where do you see Brazos County heading in the next 10 to 20 years, or more, I guess better would be, where do you want to see Brazos County heading in the next 10 to 20 years? I've asked every candidate so far that I've spoken to for this position that question, and I want to hear your take on it.
So, as one who came here over 40 years ago, back when the summer students went away and we had the summers, I like that feel. The reality, but that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And I tell people, it's whether we want it to or not, it's going to grow.
Okay.
So what I would like to see is, I won't say controlled growth, but certainly the kind of growth that takes into livable neighborhoods. That's the ideal. I don't know that will happen given what construction looks like now. Some of the neighborhoods, the fact that, again, I grew up in West Texas where we had wide streets and sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah.
Kids we could ride our bikes and roller skate. I haven't seen a neighborhood yet that looks quite like that. I've seen some where they have 3-foot wide sidewalks on one side at least, but that's the ideal of walkable neighborhoods, wide streets where kids could play, and without it being just a cul-de-sac. That's the ideal. Geographically, I don't know that will happen. And of course, there's one discussion I was sitting in, the cost of land. So you're not going to have the big yards and whatever. That's the ideal. I would like for Bryan College Station, the county, not to grow, but like I said, it's going to happen. So how can we make it livable where the quality of life is such that it's that ideal, near ideal living environment?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I see that can sometimes be a problem, how do we advance our culture for people to have things to do? That's sort of been one of the things that I've heard companies talk about. Yes, we try to promote Destination Bryan, and I can't remember what the theme is for College Station.
Yeah.
But what does that mean beside going out to eat, the sporting events? Do we have enough broader entertainment for good quality of life? And so that's another thing that is somewhat limiting.
Okay. Got it. Is there anything that we have missed that you'd like to discuss before we wrap up here?
Well, that kind of came up last night. Someone, and I can't remember whether Scott brought it up or whether someone else brought it up, but the health department came up. Okay. Because it's in an old building. Okay. Yes, both cities and the county contribute to the operation of it, but somebody brought up the fact that they thought that they should maybe possibly do away with that building, build a new building. But then the question was, where do you put it?
Yeah.
And then whether or not it should be put where the new medical examiner's office is going in. And I mean, the optics of that to me didn't feel right. Yeah. When you think about the function of a medical examiner's office and you think about the function of a health department with families and children, they don't just do, because somebody brought up some of the business owners that were there were talking about they deal with the health department from a permitting perspective.
Yeah.
But when you think about the function and what I know of the health department, that's not a location. But we do absolutely need a new health department, with new facilities, because the need is great.
Right.
I don't see the need of the use of a health department going away, but we do need a new facility. But as we try to be budget conscious, the thought of what it costs to do a whole new health department, I think the citizens would probably would resist.
Oh, okay. Well, Ms. Watson, we've really enjoyed speaking to you today, and I wanted to know, for the people watching, how can they get in touch with you? How could they help your campaign? Do you have a website? Do you have anything that they could reach out to?
Okay, so my website right now, when they were asking that last night, me and my daughter both were kind of like deer in the headlights. It's supposed to be votewandawatson.com, but we got a little bit of a glitch in it, so we're trying to get it up and going again. They can reach me by email at wandawatsonj@gmail.com. I'm sorry to say, I think my Instagram account is Vote Wanda. I'm not a social media person. Vote Wanda on Instagram, yes.
Okay.
And so that's how they can do that. So Vote Wanda, or Wanda, email me.
Well, we really appreciate it, and we'll throw that up on the screen when we release this.
Okay.
So,
well, thank you for all that you do. I absolutely love Habitat for Humanity, and I especially love your Restore, and I am a contributor.
Well,
or a donator.
Thank you so much for donating and for coming on the podcast. Again, this is the Think Brazos podcast. This is Wanda Watson running for Precinct 4, or running again for Precinct 4. Thank you so much.
Thank you.